Meanwhile, in other ABC news, young Jimmy Kimmel's coming back to television.
Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, and Seth Meyers are celebrating Jimmy Kimmel's return to TV. On September 22nd, the Walt Disney Company announced in a statement that after having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, the decision was reached to bring back Jimmy Kimmel Live on Tuesday, following the show's suspension over comments the comedian made about the man accused of fatally shooting Charlie Kirk.
Disney is bringing him back on the air tomorrow. ABC says in a statement that we made the decision last week to suspend production to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment. But now, after having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, the ABC says we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday. So Kimmel's getting back to work.
Wow, Brian, that is significant, especially given that some of the players outside of Disney in a corporate setting like Nexstar and Sinclair, they essentially have deals that allowed them to preempt his show, and that's part of the reason that it was suspended.
Yeah.
Did y'all really think we weren't going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel?
I support Jimmy Kimmel.
Someone's got to step up. Enough. We're not going to bow.
I think Jimmy Kimmel's terrible. You know what suspended him? His talent. You know what else? His ratings.
Disney issued a surprise update this afternoon. Kimmel will be back on the air tomorrow night. The company said they suspended production last week to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country.
Do we know how they might react to this?
We don't, and that becomes the big question now. Will these local station affiliates choose to air Jimmy Kimmel Live, or will they continue to protest the comedian, even though the network is bringing him back nationwide? ABC does gently chastise Kimmel in this statement. The statement says, quote, "The decision to suspend him, we made it because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive." So they're very gently saying they disagreed with Kimmel last week, but obviously they're bringing him back as of tomorrow.
Late-night hosts who showed support for Kimmel last week, condemning ABC's decision to preempt the show, were happy to hear the latest update. Jon Stewart announced Kimmel's return in the beginning of his Daily Show monologue on Monday, leading to a roar of applause from the audience.
Meanwhile, in other ABC news, young Jimmy Kimmel's coming back to television.
Adding they thought some of Jimmy's comments were ill-timed and insensitive. This morning, before the news broke, The View broke its silence on the suspension drama.
No one silences us.
Both shows share the same network, ABC, and parent company, Disney.
The government cannot apply pressure to force someone to be silenced.
The latest shockwave across Hollywood is this: the Avengers have rebelled against Disney, and not in a subtle way. Mark Ruffalo, Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, and Robert Downey Jr. are openly slamming the company over Jimmy Kimmel's firing. The irony is striking. On screen, they fight authoritarian villains. Off-screen, they're now accusing their own studio of acting like one. Everyone already knows Kimmel was pulled after his remarks about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. The backlash was immediate. FCC Chair Brendan Carr threatened affiliates with license consequences. Nexstar and Sinclair, both chasing billion-dollar mergers, broke ranks and refused to air Kimmel. Hours later, Disney suspended him indefinitely. But that was only the start. Colbert and Fallon spoke out. Wanda Sykes called the cancellation humiliating. And then Marvel's biggest name stepped in. Ruffalo warned this was the beginning of a dangerous precedent. Evans reposted Colbert's monologue with the caption, "Exactly this." Johansson labeled the decision morally bankrupt. Downey Jr. added it was a grotesque betrayal. That rebellion has now spilled over into fans and Hollywood insiders. Boycotts of Disney plus subscriptions are trending. Fans are cutting up Marvel tickets on TikTok. Writers and actors are whispering about avoiding Disney projects altogether. In other words, what looked like corporate damage control has snowballed into a cultural uprising, with Disney at the center of it. Jimmy Kimmel's suspension didn't come out of nowhere. It was triggered by one of the most direct government interventions into entertainment we've seen in years. After his monologue criticized the political spin surrounding Charlie Kirk's assassination, FCC Chair Brendan Carr called Kimmel's comments the sickest conduct possible.
Earlier, the ACLU announced 400 celebrities, including Jennifer Aniston, Tom Hanks, and Meryl Streep, had signed an open letter condemning Kimmel's suspension.
This morning, I'm canceling my Disney Plus. I'm trying to say with the pocketbook that I do not support what they're doing with Jimmy.
I just canceled my Disney Plus and Hulu subscriptions.
ET has learned that Jimmy's staff members did not have to be in the office today, but were already being paid for the week.
It would be very hard to go back when your parent company does you the way that they just did Jimmy.
But it wasn't just rhetoric. He warned ABC affiliates they could lose their licenses if they kept airing the show. That threat carried real weight. Networks like Next Star, in the middle of a $6.2 billion merger deal, weren't about to risk it. They immediately announced they'd preempt Kimmel's program. Sinclair followed, eager to protect its own merger prospects. Within hours, the industry landscape had shifted. Disney executives faced affiliate revolts, regulatory threats, and the possibility of losing government approval for deals worth billions. The result was predictable: an emergency round of calls, a decision made behind closed doors, and Kimmel's show suspended indefinitely. Disney publicly framed it as a review of standards, but inside ABC, executives admitted something else. Kimmel hadn't broken editorial lines. The suspension wasn't about what he said, it was about avoiding retaliation. That's why the decision cut so deep. Instead of protecting its talent, Disney bent to political pressure. And in doing so, it turned a late-night monologue into the opening shot of a cultural revolt. The comedy world didn't waste a second in responding. Stephen Colbert opened his show with a line that spread across every platform. "Tonight we are all Jimmy Kimmel." He mocked the idea that government regulators should decide what jokes can be told, warning that once you give in, you don't get that ground back. Jimmy Fallon chose a calmer delivery, but made the same point. Looking straight into the camera, he told his audience this wasn't about a single joke or a single comedian. It's about whether we keep saying what we want to say without fear. His words landed, because everyone understood the stakes had shifted from comedy to free expression. Wanda Sykes brought raw frustration. She was scheduled to appear on Kimmel's show the night it was pulled. Instead, she filmed herself in makeup, furious that the cancellation had erased her appearance. Her message was sharp. Silencing one performer doesn't just punish the host, it humiliates everyone tied to the show. By the end of the week, late night wasn't divided by networks anymore. They were united by a common threat. The message across comedy was clear.
Over the weekend, Jimmy's cousin Sal, a writer and performer on the show, teased more drama ahead.
There are a couple bombshells still there. Everything's going to be just fine.
The president, meanwhile, has been on an anti-Kimmel media blitz. At the White House.
He was terrible.
On Air Force One.
He's got no talent, and he's got no ratings.
And at yesterday's memorial for Charlie Kirk.
The same commentators who this week are screaming fascism were implying that Charlie Kirk deserved what happened to him.
He didn't say anything that nobody else didn't say. I think he'll be back on the air.
This wasn't about protecting Kimmel. It was about protecting the right to challenge power without being shut down. And just as the comedy world found its voice, the backlash reached a level Disney never saw coming, because Marvel's biggest stars entered the fight. When Marvel's stars spoke out, the controversy went from big to seismic. Mark Ruffalo was first, warning in a live stream that silencing comedians was just the beginning. Actors are next. Writers are next. Directors are next. Every voice that challenges power becomes a target. His words framed Disney as a company choosing fear over principle. Chris Evans didn't need paragraphs to make his point. He reposted Colbert's "We Are All Jimmy Kimmel" monologue with 2 words: exactly this. Fans immediately tied it to his Captain America persona, a symbol of standing up to authority, now mirrored in real life. Scarlett Johansson, always measured, called Disney's move morally bankrupt. For her, it wasn't just about Kimmel. It was about whether any artist could trust Disney to defend their creative voice when it mattered. And then Robert Downey Jr. spoke, breaking his usual silence on political issues. He called the suspension a grotesque betrayal and later added that Disney had turned from the House of Mouse into the House of Silence. Coming from Iron Man himself, it was a headline no PR team could spin away. The symbolism was devastating. On screen, these actors embodied resistance. Off-screen, they were now accusing Disney of becoming the very thing their characters fought against. It was no longer just a late-night scandal. It was Marvel's heroes rebelling against their own studio. While Disney tried to frame Kimmel's suspension as a standards decision, President Trump made sure nobody believed it. On Truth Social, he congratulated ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. He dismissed Kimmel as untalented with bad ratings. But the celebration told a different story. This was personal. At rallies, Trump escalated. He didn't stop with Kimmel. He named Colbert, Fallon, and Seth Meyers, telling supporters those shows should be next. It was an extraordinary moment, a sitting president demanding that critics on television be silenced. The White House doubled down, calling Kimmel a sick entertainer and branding his removal as a victory for America. The contradiction was glaring. If Kimmel was irrelevant, why was the president devoting so much energy to his suspension? That only fueled critics who said this was never about ratings or conduct. It was about political power reaching into entertainment. Even conservative media started to split. Tucker Carlson warned that silencing satire was an attack on the soul of democracy.
And we don't know, obviously, all of the considerations that went into this, Brian. But I would say leaders, obviously, at ABC and Disney have had the benefit of a few days of feedback.
Yeah. Including from Disney employees who were very disturbed, including from Hollywood stars and showrunners, the kind of people Disney wants to work with, and from free speech groups, politicians, even some Republican politicians like Ted Cruz. We know the condemnation of Disney has been widespread.
Megyn Kelly reminded viewers that Republicans traditionally defend free speech, not crush it. Those cracks made Disney's decision look even weaker. The company had aligned itself with political threats at the very moment some conservatives were backing away from them. And while Trump celebrated, the public response shifted into something Disney couldn't control: boycotts, cancellations, and grassroots backlash. The suspension triggered a wave of grassroots anger. Hashtags like #StandWithKimmel, #CancelDisney, and #BoycottMarvel began trending across X and TikTok. Fans didn't just post opinions, they posted receipts. Screenshots of canceled Disney Plus subscriptions flooded timelines with captions like, "Until Kimmel is back, you don't get my money." Others filmed themselves cutting up Marvel tickets or vowing to skip Disney parks. The boycott energy spread fast because the symbolism was so strong. This wasn't about disliking a single decision. It was about punishing a company that many now saw as bowing to political intimidation. Viral clips framed it simply: stop buying Disney. Stop watching Marvel. Stop feeding the House of Silence inside Hollywood. The reaction was equally sharp. Writers warned that if one of the longest-standing late-night hosts could be taken off air under political pressure, then no creative was safe. Agents whispered about avoiding Disney projects. Producers described a chill spreading across the industry. If Disney could fold this easily, what would it do next time? Leaks from ABC executives only made it worse. Multiple insiders admitted privately that they never believed Kimmel had violated standards of conduct. The real concern was losing FCC licenses and jeopardizing billion-dollar mergers. That revelation destroyed Disney's defense. It wasn't about principles, it was about survival. And in that moment, the story stopped being just about Jimmy Kimmel. It became about whether the most powerful entertainment company in the world had chosen compliance over courage. What made this backlash different was how quickly it transformed into a cultural moment. The Avengers weren't just speaking out, fans were turning their words into symbols. TikTok edits spliced Captain America's "I can do this all day" with Chris Evans' exactly this post. Iron Man's "I am Iron Man" line was cut against Robert Downey Jr., calling Disney's decision cowardice. These viral clips reframed the entire scandal as Marvel's heroes rebelling against their own studio.
The comedian then poked fun at the boycott campaign against Disney.
I want to say this seriously. That campaign that you all launched, pretending that you were going to cancel Hulu, while secretly racing through 4 seasons of Only Murders in the Building, that really worked. Congratulations. Wasn't it? Wasn't it interesting to try and figure out all the tentacles Disney has in your daily life? It's one thing to swear off cruises, but the Avengers? Nah.
Mark Ruffalo fueled that energy with more live streams. His warning was clear. Creativity dies when executives silence truth-tellers. Scarlett Johansson echoed him, telling a trade outlet that Marvel's brand collapses under hypocrisy if Disney embraces censorship. Each statement kept the controversy alive. Each headline made Disney look weaker. Fans amplified it. Number House of Silence trended for days. Viewers posted cancellation screenshots with messages like, "Disney doesn't own freedom." Even late-night solidarity clips were reshared endlessly, keeping the narrative focused on free speech instead of Disney's official talking points. Industry insiders began connecting dots. Disney wasn't just facing boycotts. It was facing the possibility of losing trust with its top creative talent. Agents told reporters that actors were privately questioning whether to sign new deals with Disney. Writers Guild members warned this would haunt the company for years. By then, the storyline had shifted completely. It wasn't framed as Jimmy Kimmel versus Disney, it was Disney versus Hollywood. And at the center of that clash, Marvel's own stars were leading the rebellion. As the outrage spread, pressure began hitting Disney from angles it couldn't ignore. Shareholders started asking tough questions on earnings calls, worried that the boycotts and negative press could dent subscription growth and box office returns. Analysts flagged a dip in Disney Plus search traffic and warned that Marvel's already fragile momentum could collapse if the rebellion kept snowballing. Behind closed doors, executives were split. Some pushed to quietly reinstate Kimmel before the fallout grew worse. Others argued that backing down would anger regulators and risk merger approvals tied to affiliates like Nexstar and Sinclair. The indecision leaked to the press, painting Disney leadership as paralyzed. Meanwhile, Hollywood guilds were sharpening their message. Writers pointed out that if a veteran like Kimmel could be sidelined overnight, no creative contract meant safety. Agents whispered that several actors were reconsidering upcoming Marvel commitments. Producers described morale as collapsing, with Disney no longer seen as a partner, but as a liability. Even conservative voices added to the instability. Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly both doubled down on their warnings, telling audiences that censorship today could become censorship against them tomorrow. That bipartisan criticism left Disney isolated, attacked from left, right, and center all at once. The optics were brutal. Instead of controlling the narrative, Disney was losing it, with every headline framing the company as an empire cracking under its own fear. And that set the stage for the question no one in leadership wanted to face. How long can a studio survive when both its audience and its own stars brand it the villain? By now, the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel is no longer about late-night comedy. It's a test of whether the most powerful studio in the world will stand for creative freedom or fold to political intimidation. On one side, Disney faces regulators and affiliates tied to billion-dollar mergers. On the other, it faces boycotts, public outrage, and its own Avengers stars branding it the House of Silence. The contradiction is striking. For decades, Disney built its reputation as the dream factory, the place that celebrated imagination, courage, and resistance. Yet today, its own actors are accusing it of betraying those same values. Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo, and Robert Downey Jr. aren't fringe voices. They're the faces of Marvel, the franchise that carried Disney through the last decade. When they call the company cowardly, the damage runs deeper than any single scandal. Meanwhile, fans are making their choice clear. Disney Plus cancellations are trending. Hashtags refuse to fade. Viral edits keep framing the studio as the villain in its own universe. And every day Kimmel stays off the air, that image grows stronger. Disney now stands at a crossroads. Reinstate Kimmel and risk political retaliation, or keep him off the air and cement its reputation as a company that chose compliance over courage. Either path comes with consequences. But one thing is certain, this controversy has already rewritten Disney's story, not as the House of Mouse, but as a studio accused of silencing its own heroes.